Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice. Choice is a publishing division of the ACRL and the publisher of Choice Reviews and CC Advisor. This episode is brought to you by the University of Chicago Press. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice, and during this 4-episode series, my guests and I discuss the inner workings of two storied institutions in the academic publishing and library worlds, the Chicago Manual of Style and the publishing office at the Library of Congress. So for the next couple of episodes, I'll be joined by Carol Saller, a longtime manuscript editor at the University of Chicago Press, who now inhabits more of a marketing role at the Manual as editor of its online Q&A and the Chicago Manual of Style Shop Talk blog. Also joining me is Becky Brasington Clark, who heads up the Library of Congress Publishing Office as its Director of Publishing. In this third episode of our series, which we recorded over Skype, our guests reveal a bit more about the publishing model at the Library of Congress and how it performs an outreach function for the collections at the library, and what updates made it in just under the wire for the 17th edition of the Chicago Manual of Style, and what new updates are in store for the 18th edition. I'll give you a hint. A lot of thought right now is dedicated toward the future of citations. Excellent. Okay. All right. So for a minute now, I'd just like to transition into the world of research and writing, because I know that's one of the things that our listeners are definitely engaged in at their libraries. So maybe to start out, Becky, I'd ask you to tell us a little bit about what goes into a book that the publishing office decides to work on and eventually publish. Who does the research behind it? Who clears the permissions on the photos? You were talking a little bit about this earlier, but if we can kind of go in a little bit more in depth on your publishing model, that would be great. And then maybe couch this sort of in the context of how your projects are designed to sort of perform an outreach function on behalf of the Library of Congress collections.
A lot of our projects are really driven by institutional priorities, such as major exhibitions. For example, for the library's current Baseball Americana exhibition, we created 2 companion volumes. The first, which bears the same name as the exhibition, is pretty big. It's got 256 pages, 350 illustrations, and it draws on the breadth and the variety of the library's collections. And that book was written by a team of writers. Some were curators and subject specialists at the library. Some were writer-editors in the publishing office itself. And oftentimes that's what you see, particularly when you come across a big illustrated book that we've published, that has really taken a village to pull that all together. So our writer-editors on staff tend to be generalists and really kind of mavericks in that we all get excited about a little bit of everything. But to get down and to drill down to the specifics of a particular topic, we really have to go to the experts, and that might be a scholar external to the library, it might be a subject specialist or a curator within the library, and we really get them to provide us the background we need to make sure that what we're talking about is true and accurate.
Could I jump in here with a question?
Yeah, sure.
So, Becky, how does that compare to the sort of peer review process that a university press would do?
So that's a really good question. We do a lot of internal peer review. We generally will have material that's been written by a writer, edited, reviewed by subject specialist or another expert. If it's been written by an expert here at the library, we may send it out to an external scholar to review. That kind of review is usually not blind. In fact, and by that I mean that the reviewer knows who the author is and the author knows who the reviewer is, and there can be a dialogue that goes along with it. If we are doing a particularly scholarly work, and if that scholarly work is being published by a university press or other scholarly press, often that organization, that publisher, will do their own peer review. And in that case, it may be single blind, double blind, but they will validate the scholarship using their own methods, and we welcome that.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Becky, what goes into the process of sort of deciding or pitching, these projects to various publishers? Do you have particular ones that you've established a relationship with already that tend to be your go-tos, or do you look at a variety of opportunities in terms of who might publish a project?
We really look at a variety. We have such vast and varied collections, and the different aspects that our books can explore may appeal to one publisher and not another. So every time we look at a new project and start to pitch it to publishers, we take a look at the project and we think, what kind of publisher is really going to get this? And what kind of work is it to begin with? Who's the audience? If the audience is a trade audience, we're going to tend to go to trade publishers. If it's an academic audience, we're going to tend to go to scholarly and university press publishers. So we really think about that. We do a lot of research in what kinds of books various publishers are publishing. We go online a lot. We look at catalogs a lot. We have a lot of meetings. Whenever publishers and editorial staffs are in D.C., we encourage them to come visit with us so that we can get to know one another a little bit better. And it's those conversations where we really can brainstorm ideas and get a sense of what really excites an acquisitions editor at a publisher, and that helps us determine when to pitch them on a particular project.
Okay. Talk a little bit more about sort of, how complete, your manuscripts tend to be as you sort of get to the tail end of a project and begin to present these to potential publishing partners. I mean, you really kind of soup to nuts provide just about everything that's necessary, don't you?
Yeah, we do. I will say this, as we are developing concepts and beginning to work with publishers, we welcome their input on a project. So I don't want to say that we're bringing projects to publishers and we're just asking them to co-publish the work and that's the end of it. There's definitely collaboration involved. Okay. But the value proposition that is most appealing in our relations with publishers is that we do such a wonderful job of developing concepts, of really doing a lot of developmental editing. We recently did a book called Drawn to Purpose about American women illustrators and cartoonists, and worked with a curator at the library who has massive expertise in this field, but she'd never written a book before. And so we really worked with her to tease out the stories of these women and to really get to what made them want to do what they did in an industry that was so dominated by men. She was not confident in her storytelling skills before she worked with our office, and we worked with her for about a year to really get that manuscript into shape. So by the time we submitted the manuscript to the co-publisher, which in this case is the University Press of Mississippi, not only was it accurate, well written, well put together, but it told a story in a way that wasn't going to be the case without our intervention. At the same time, we provided all the high-resolution images, all the high-res scans. We cleared all the permissions. We wrote all the captions. We made sure all the citations were correct.
That's amazing. Do you, beyond that, I mean, do you provide any publicity support to, post-publication or even as a ramp-up pre-publication? Or does the publisher kind of take over?
No, it's definitely a partnership. Yeah. If it's an exhibition, then the book or the companion volume is really part of the library's continuum of communications. There's a lot of outreach around an exhibition. There may be gallery talks. If, for example, in our current exhibition, Baseball Americana, which continues through next year, we just released a second volume that will actually officially release next week with Smithsonian Books. called Game Faces, and it's about the early baseball cards and how they reflected the professionalization of the game and changes in American culture. Well, the author of that book is a writer on our staff, and he will actually do talks related to that topic in gallery talks here at the library. And in that regard, he promotes the baseball cards that are in the collection. He promotes the baseball cards that are featured in the exhibition. He promotes the book, and in the process promotes the library. At the same time, the library has an extensive social media presence. We've got a very wonderful website. We've got a quarterly magazine. All of those provide outreach and publicity opportunities for our publications.
We all benefited from one once. I mean, more than once, but one I remember is on social media. I saw Library of Congress pushing out a notice that they posted or made available, these vast archives of public domain photos. And that's what, we go to when we're trying to illustrate something at the blog or whatever. We're very appreciative that those are available.
That's a huge service that the library's been promoting recently. They provide sets of photographs and illustrations that are believed to be in the public domain. So it's called the Free to Use and Reuse. And you can go right to the library's homepage and scroll down and see what they're featuring. This week they're doing bridges, photographs and images of bridges, and it's a fantastic service.
Support for this podcast comes from the University of Chicago Press and the 17th edition of the Chicago Manual of Style, All the Rules for Writing, referenced by generations of writers, editors, professionals, and college students. Available at bookstores everywhere. The Chicago Manual of Style is also online. Annual subscriptions are available to individuals and small user groups, as well as to academic, private, and public libraries. Free trial subscriptions are available. Learn more about the ways you can bring the Chicago Manual of Style to your library by visiting www.chicagomanualofstyle.org. That's www.chicagomanualofstyle.org. Listeners can save 25% on a print copy of the manual by using promo code CHOICEPOD25. That's CHOICEPOD, the number 25, at checkout. So, Becky, these promotional opportunities, just, and then just kind of going back to, the baseball title, are these sort of baked into, I guess the sort of production process of the title as you move through that, or do you keep some air in the schedule in terms of looking at evaluating opportunities as the book comes out or as these books come out, sort of gauging public interest and sort of capitalizing on opportunities as they arise?
I would say it varies from book to book.
Yeah.
When it's related to an exhibition, then you're really focusing on the campaign around the exhibition and promoting the exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, you want everybody to be pointed in the same direction. You want the coverage and the promotion to be as concentrated as it can be, usually around the opening of an exhibition. And I think anyone who's ever published an exhibition catalog or companion volume understands the nail-biting anxiety of getting the publication ready so that it is available for sale at the time the exhibition opens. And this is particularly gut-wrenching when you're dealing with books that have a lot of color in them because they're often printed overseas. And so you've really got to bake into that schedule the shipping time, which is always by sea freight. It's in a container on a boat on the water for a month. And so those schedules get very protracted in a way that is sometimes hard to explain.
Right. Okay. So, Carol, we've talked about the broader cultural context that informs decisions about what to put in the new editions of CMOS. But when we've spoken earlier, you mentioned the manual is never really at the forefront necessarily of these changes. Rather, it's sort of a tone that sides with the accepted answer after the dust settles from whatever cultural scuffle it is. But what are some of the topics around which the dust has settled that appear in the 17th edition? I think you were talking earlier about some of the more the changes tend to gather around technological advances that impact the publishing process. But my follow-up on that is as you see queries and comments coming in currently, are there topics that may be percolating already or have potential for inclusion in an 18th edition? And I'm not sort of asking you for I'm not looking for a spoiler alert here, but I'm wondering if if you can kind of give us a crystal ball look at what might be coming down the pike based on the questions you're getting now.
Of course. Well, for the 17th edition, there were two issues that made it in just under the wire in the midst of a really lively in-house debate about whether the dust actually had settled or not. And those two issues were whether to take the hyphen out of email and whether to lowercase internet. And we've been watching these words for years, of course, and it was clear that eventually there would be no point in trying to buck the trend. We had a list of newspapers and dictionaries and style guides that had already made the change, but there were still some heavyweights who hadn't, including Merriam-Webster, and we were divided on whether to jump or not. Okay, now, this is just gossip, but I'm sure you're dying to know. The marketing department was in favor of the changes for two reasons. First, they were picturing viral headlines and lots of publicity for the new edition if we made the change. And second, if we didn't change them, they feared mockery on social media down the road when we were the only ones left still using the more formal styling. I myself deferred to Russell Harper on lowercasing the internet, but I really wanted to take the hyphen out of email, partly because I saw the writing on the wall, and mostly because it's a nuisance to type a hyphen on the keyboard on my phone. Anyway, we did make the changes, and they did go viral, and it was a lot of fun. In fact, I announced them at the annual conference of the Society for Editing, and a big cheer went up, and then I tweeted about all the nerdy cheering, and it was like a career high for me.
Hey, Carol,
yeah.
Carol, you make a really good point about changes that are emerging as the result of the fact that we're typing on keyboards on our telephones. I think that's fascinating. And these virtual keyboards, you're right, finding a hyphen is a real hassle on your phone.
I know. Depending on which keyboard you use, some make it easier than others.
So are you seeing other style trends emerging out of that very real cultural phenomena?
Well,
emojis.
Yeah, we're not going to.
Yeah. But I mean that raises a question. I don't want to be I guess stickler about the phone here, but I guess use of the phone you would think would be sort of folks tend to be a little bit more casual in their communication if they're whether they're texting or even sending an email. So I'm wondering if the device itself has any influence on style decisions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure Becky has a point that even with the issue of email, it must surely have trended that way because people were just dropping the hyphen.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there will be many. Although even before texting, compounds tend to grow together over time as they solidify as accepted combinations. So it's probably not just one factor, but several that feed into that.
Right. And then looking ahead to the next edition, anything emerging so far as a potential area for updates?
Oh yeah, we keep notes, and not just from the Q&A, but we keep notes on right now inclusive language, indigenous style is a big topic that we could do more on. Accessibility, technology keeps changing, and we need to do more of that. And really the big one for us is the future of citation and how long it will continue to make sense to have these huge chapters with millions of detailed examples when citation tech is moving toward unique identifiers. So we would love to have a crystal ball, but for now, all we can do is keep making notes and keep an ear on the conversation.
You just heard from Carol Saller and Becky Brasington Clark. This concludes the third of our four-part series on the Chicago Manual of Style and the Library of Congress Publishing Office. This episode was brought to you by the University of Chicago Press. Be sure to join us next week for our final episode of this series when we talk about how the Publishing Office amplifies the Library of Congress's outreach efforts and why all of the style guides are sick to death of arguing over the Oxford comma.
We also work with co-publishers to create calendars, note cards, quiz decks, jigsaw puzzles, coloring books, sticker books, and those also highlight collection items. And I think these are really important to the library's outreach efforts because they will help us make the collections visible and accessible to pre-readers and in some cases to non-readers.
Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. On choice360.org, you'll also find information on Choice's entire product platform, including Choice Reviews, CC Advisor, Choice webinars, resources for college libraries, our white papers, and a whole lot more. A great way to keep up with The Authority File is to join the Choice Authority File Facebook group, which you can access via the Choice Reviews Facebook page. As a member of the group, you can give us feedback, suggest podcast participants, chat with other listeners, and submit new topic ideas. Sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and production duties are courtesy of Choice's digital media specialist, Mark Dirks. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.